What's going on, coin traders? Thanks for joining me for the show. A lot of red in the market for the second day in a row. So we're seeing a lot of cryptos down, not quite as much as yesterday. So we can think that a lot of selling pressure is starting to slow down, but nonetheless, still a pretty impactful selling day for the bears to show that they are still in control right now. But we are going to be talking about some downside targets and whether or not this actually is sustainable and what we can expect going forward in the coming days and weeks. So let's flip on over to CoinMarketCap. You can actually see that even now, almost week on week, we are looking at a lot of cryptos, almost all of them being in the red over the last 7 days, obviously with the handful of exceptions here, but most are seeing a continuous downside red slippage for the last 7 days and specifically over the last day as well. So definitely a lot of bearish sentiment and pressure going on right now. Whether or not this was expected and justified, we do know that healthy markets are actually showing that we do need to see continuous pullbacks constantly in order to actually claim those levels of support that we often look at in order to confirm a strength, allow a lot of that sell-off pressure so the bulls can regain their strength again and continue the upside move and a lot of that buying pressure. So I'm going to flip over now and talk about the current market cap chart for all cryptos, including Bitcoin right now. So we are looking at the log scale, and we have talked about this pattern before, how we were in a much longer term falling wedge that started off on the last bull market. So right now looking at $1.152 trillion for the overall market cap. And as you can see, starting to backtest now this big zone that we've actually drawn. And this was left over from the last time we've talked about this market cap chart. So still in an overall good bullish formation and setup though. So we haven't had a complete cross yet with the 12, the 26, and the 50 on bottom, but we are looking like we are going to be having that at some point, because if we do zoom in right now, you can see the 12 and 50 are actually pretty close to intersecting as well with the 26 on bottom. So if we actually go ahead and look at the exponential moving averages a little bit more, 26 has been a very relevant line of support, which now has flipped into the 50 being a very relevant line of support. So all still very good signs when we talk about flipping these for the future, especially getting stuck up in this overall zone for market cap for about 3 weeks prior to having this nice bullish break. Not a lot of follow through, but we do need to see a back test confirming this level as that nice support, especially since it was extremely big resistance previously over the last 3 weeks. And in addition, back in August of 2022, big point of resistance that we actually didn't see the bulls be able to break over before pulling back, finding our FTX crash and our year-end lows before starting this nice little pump here. So if we actually zoom out a little bit farther too, you can see this is an extremely relevant line as well, because we do have a big point of support prior to flushing this back in June of 2022. And then also this was the point that we actually saw a lot of dip buying. This actually extended up to about 1.28 trillion. And then looking left a little bit farther, big point of resistance before finding our initial trend high for the market cap, topping out at a high of 2.577 trillion. So overall, this chart is still looking pretty good, especially after maintaining higher highs and breaking a lot of these big resistance points, flipped now, hopefully continuing to be that support like we have seen during the strength of the bull run, pulling back into the bull market, or bear market, excuse me. So nothing of suspect right now. So let's actually go ahead and flip over into the altcoin chart, and you can see that let's actually flip out of the log scale here. We haven't necessarily run up into a bullish formation like we have with Bitcoin, since that is the strong name. So we are getting stuck up a little bit more on the current resistance point right at about 670 billion. So that is one of the big resistances right now, but we do have up overhead a pretty strong and significant zone. As you can see, a big resistance point as well. Just like we talked about with the other chart, big support point and resistance, and then a lot of support as well as a lot of resistance. So an extremely strong and relevant zone all the way up to about 700 billion for the altcoin space. And like we said before, it's actually a good sign too, not to immediately blow through this level. So we actually have time and the opportunity to see a little bit more confirmation of an establishment of some support lines. So specifically right now, we're looking at a very strong support right around the $600 billion level. So as we can see, several weeks getting stuck up. We got stuck up, and then again, we got stuck up, pulling off of the August 2022 run. So the fact that now we are hopefully being able to find support on top of this level should be able to confirm that we can still see a little bit more sideways action, confirmation, and consolidation above this level. So if the bulls can maintain price action on top of 600 billion for overall market cap for the altcoin space, that's going to be a much better sign and signal. We do have about 3 days left on the current weekly chart. So if we can close in the current formation, we will be looking like a green-red inside bar formation so far. And then hopefully the following week, we can see another green bar, continuing those inside bars, ultimately maintaining the $600 billion level of support, and then being able to consolidate enough where we can see enough upside move and maintain a big bullish move and break on top of the 700 billion, which hopefully then in that instance would flip into support, especially since that would allow these weekly exponential moving averages to continue to roll on up to the upside in a complete bullish formation. So this is kind of the bullish scenario here that we would be looking at. Now, if we do actually reject from 600 billion, that's going to be a pretty bad sign, especially if we do continue to see a little fall through from the bears. If you can see on this weekly chart, we're forming a little bit of this trend line. So if we can break this, or if the bears do break this, that's actually going to be a little bit of a bad sign. And we are going to be testing some of these lows. So specifically after that, we would be looking at about 546 billion down to about the price low, which is coming in at 525. And then down, we would be looking right at about the $500 billion mark. So those are going to be extremely critical targets to maintain if in fact we do break the $600 billion level and this trend line. So that would be pretty critical and key to be able to maintain at least at a bare minimum, pun intended, 525 billion before seeing another run up of this 670 to $700 billion resistance target. Realistically, though, I think if we do end up breaking a lot of these levels and this trend line, as well as the exponential moving average support for the close on this weekly, and we do end up backtesting, that's almost going to confirm 670 as being the trend high right now, and we will be looking at a new lower high, probably getting stuck up again at this big resistance point, 600 billion, before pulling back and retesting 500 billion, and then down to our year-end low just below 440 at about 430 billion. So obviously that's the extremely bearish scenario, but we do have to be anticipating and aware of what would actually cause both scenarios. So right now, that's why it is so key and critical to be looking at the $600 billion line for the close on the weekly for these altcoins. Like we said, there's still 3 days left, so let's actually go ahead and flip into the 2-day chart here, and still looking fairly good since we are still maintaining exponential average moving support. But obviously, we would have liked to have seen not such a steep retracement on the last 2 days for altcoins, since this is a pretty big retracement after such a nice breakout on top of this big 600 to about $615 billion resistance level that we had been getting stuck up for multiple weeks. So now being able to have the pairs still push prices back below that level and reclaim prices back inside, kind of a little bit of a false breakout in that sense. But yeah, so that's why it is so key and important to make sure that we do maintain that type of support, because the last time we have seen a dump so big was pretty much right before the Silicon Valley Bank news, where we had a lot of money then flow into crypto consolidate in our recent breakout. So seeing such a big retracement and breakout, ideally we would love to get another bounce, test that level again. But at this point, I'm not really expecting it, especially since if we actually look at the RSI relative strength index for this 2-day chart, you can see that we were getting lower highs week on week. So right off the start of the year, we actually got a high of 71.63. Then about the start of February, we got 71.1. And then finally, just now in this instance, we were looking at 68.63. So not even breaking that overbought level just yet. MACD and stochastic RSIs are looking like they want to cross and head to the downside as well. So that's going to be another signal that we have to look out for, which might be another indication of a little bit more of that bearish pressure coming in. However, my fear right now is that when we do get these pretty big and substantial sell-offs right at the tops, then typically that does signal and indicate a little bit more of the longer-term downside pressure, kind of like similar to what we saw back in August. We had a couple of days of sell-off and then a pretty big flush on this 2-day, seeing multiple big sell-off days. So that's not what we would want to see. And pretty much if we do get follow through from the bears, that's pretty much going to confirm, I would think in this instance, at least a trail and a retracement back to 500 billion and then down to the low point like we talked about below 440 down to about 430 billion. 430 is a pretty big support point though for the longer term, since it was an initial bounce. We had multiple tests of it prior to the end of the year when we actually saw our run up again. So that is one of the things to the downside like we are going to be looking at, and that's why some of these support levels are going to be so key and critical to hold if we actually want to have any hope of seeing a little bit more of that upside gain. Flipping back into the total market cap, just to highlight again, so we're still at a pretty good scenario and setup since we are maintaining a very big zone that was extreme resistance and consolidation point prior to this initial run-up. What did get us stuck pretty much right at the $31,000 level for Bitcoin, just above $1.25 trillion for the overall market cap with Bitcoin. So if we do in fact lose this zone and lose about the $1 trillion level, that's going to confirm a lot more slippage to the downside and likely lead to another big sell-off. And without a lot of the news like we saw from Silicon Valley Bank, we're probably going to get a continuation of a downside move, especially since we have been overextended for a little bit now. So overall, the fact that we have seen 2 days in a row, day over day, of a pullback and a significant pullback at that's not necessarily the best sign. And that's why over the next day or two, we actually do need to see a lot more of the bulls come in, defending some of those supports and being able to see some of those oversold bounces with continuing follow through to the upside. If that scenario doesn't play out, then it is almost extremely likely that bears are going to still stay and maintain control, which does mean a farther slippage for the longer term to the downside and a test of some of the lower supports. As always, though, do drop me your notes down below, what you think is going to happen, issues, predictions, disagreements, all that stuff. Do love getting back to each and every one of you and hearing from the rest of the community as well and staying engaged. Also, if you want to drop me a follow over on Twitter and chat with me there, at coin_trades is the handle. Looking forward to seeing everyone over on Twitter. That is going to do it for the show now, though. So if you did enjoy the show today, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Do appreciate all the continuous love and support. As always, it does mean so much. Stay safe, take care, everyone, and I will catch you back in the next video.